Hi guys and welcome to CrazyPeppera Revenge. This channel is all about crazy true stories, stuff that happens in real life when things get a little bit messy, people dealing with drama, cheating, lies, breakups, and even revenge. Some stories are wild, some are emotional, but all of them will keep you watching. If you like real talk and real situations, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stick around. This is CrazyPeppera Revenge, where the stories get spicy.
You wanted my house, my cheating wife, my life? Take it with me.
So this happened over the past year, and I'm finally ready to share the full story because holy crap, I still can't believe how deep this rabbit hole went. I, 32M, thought I had the perfect life. Great job as a business analyst at Marcus Financial Group. Nice house, loving wife Allison, 29F. We'd been married almost 5 years after meeting at work, where she started in admin support before becoming an executive assistant. Everything was genuinely good until Alan Marcus, the company founder who'd been like a father to me, died suddenly from a massive stroke. This man literally saved my life. He hired me 8 years ago when I was recovering from combat wounds in the Middle East, helped me transition to civilian life, supported me through physical therapy, even generously paid for our honeymoon in Hawaii. Alan was everything his son Jake wasn't. Kind, honorable, genuinely caring about his employees. His passing devastated everyone who knew him. Jake was supposed to eventually become CEO, but the board thought he was too inexperienced and arrogant, so they appointed an interim CEO instead. Alan had actually confided in me about his serious concerns with Jake's behavior. The guy was a total sleazeball who spent his time flirting with female employees and throwing his family name around like he was entitled to everything. Allison had even told me he was a sexual maltreatment lawsuit waiting to happen. Alan hoped the job would help Jake mature, but I had serious doubts. When Jake became regional manager after Bill Collins retired, he immediately decided he wanted Allison as his new executive assistant. The conversation in my office was creepy as hell. He asked inappropriate questions about what she was like at home with this disgusting smirk on his face. I made it crystal clear that I expected him to respect our marriage, and he just kept smirking and said, of course, while hinting there might even be a promotion in it for me. Red flags everywhere. The job meant constant travel every 2 weeks and working late 3 nights a week, but it came with a substantial raise, and we desperately needed the money for when we planned to start having kids. I trusted my wife completely and figured I could handle Jake's sleazy behavior as long as it stayed professional. Boy, was I wrong about everything. At first, everything seemed legitimate. Allison was traveling frequently and working ridiculous hours, but I didn't see anything unprofessional in her behavior. Then Alan died, and everything went straight to hell. Jake was absolutely furious he didn't get promoted directly to CEO and started taking it out on everyone, especially Allison. He began overworking her out of pure spite, making her travel constantly and work completely unreasonable hours that were destroying our marriage. That's when I started noticing the dramatic changes in my wife. Our closeness completely dried up. We went from making love regularly to maybe once a month. Allison's entire wardrobe became way more revealing. Short skirts that barely covered anything, low-cut tops that showed off her cleavage, and I noticed she'd stopped wearing bras entirely. She grew demanding and short-tempered, snapping at me over the smallest things and acting like I was bothering her just by existing in our own home. When I finally confronted her about how Jake's insane schedule was liquidating our marriage, she got extremely defensive, but eventually agreed we desperately needed time to reconnect. She said she'd talked to Jake about taking a week off. The next day, she came home much happier, saying Jake had agreed we could take the week off, but only if we attended his party Friday night first. Something about that condition made me deeply uneasy, but I agreed as long as she promised to come home at reasonable hours the rest of that week. The party was at Jake's expensive townhouse in the ritzy part of town with 3 extremely sketchy guys, John Whitehead, George Franklin, and Alan Jenkins, who apparently worked for Henderson Manufacturing, one of our major clients. The moment Jake opened the door, the whole place reeked of marijuana, and I immediately felt uncomfortable about the entire situation. But what really bothered me was seeing my wife's outfit. She was wearing this incredibly short, revealing dress with slits up both sides and a completely open back that exposed way too much skin. I could see her underwear through the material, and the dress barely covered her bosoms. When I asked where she got such a revealing dress, she casually said, "I got it in New York. Jake asked me to wear it tonight. That should have been a massive red flag, but I was still in denial about what was really happening. Jake immediately started calling her Allie, a nickname that only I had ever used throughout our entire relationship, and I watched him put his hands all over her bare thigh while introducing her to his friends. He called her his work wife, right in front of me, and said he'd be lost without her. The guys were openly smoking marijuana and doing lines of cocaine like it was completely normal. When they offered me some, I politely declined, saying I preferred to keep a clear head. I actually have a high booze tolerance, but quit drinking years ago after nearly eliminating someone in a drunken rage. What absolutely shocked me was watching my wife accept both the marijuana and cocaine, like she'd been doing it for months. She took hits from the joint and snorted powder without any hesitation while I sat there stunned, not recognizing this person who was supposed to be my loving wife. This was completely out of character for the woman I'd married. I excused myself to the bathroom to process what I was witnessing, and when I returned, everyone, including Allison, had white powder residue around their noses from doing more cocaine. My wine suddenly tasted strange and metallic, and within minutes I felt incredibly drowsy and disoriented. As I was passing out on the couch, I heard them talking over me like I wasn't even there. "You sure you don't want to tie him up and make him watch us?" George asked with this sick laugh. "No, this is enough for one night. We have all week. We can always step things up if he doesn't go along," Jake replied coldly. Then I heard the most devastating thing possible. My own wife saying, "I'd like to see that," when they joked about John sexually attacking me. "Maybe if you're nice, you can get him to do more," she added, and they all laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Jake laid out his entire sick plan while I was helpless. Tomorrow, I'll introduce him to the really hard stuff. By next week, Mark will be a complete pill dependent. Maybe I'll even have him working the streets for me. Too bad dear old dad isn't around to see his golden boy fall. When Allison asked if she was with him, she replied, "I'm with you, sweetie. I've grown to love this too much to walk away." Then they all went upstairs for what she called the real party. I had accidentally started recording video on my phone before passing out, and it captured their entire conspiracy. When I woke up over 3 hours later in the dark house, I crept upstairs and found my completely undressed wife in Jake's bed with him and one of the other men. The other two were passed out on furniture nearby. I quietly gathered evidence, took her phone, which was full of explicit photos and videos, poured my obsessed drink into a container for testing, and found an unfamiliar key on her keychain that fit Jake's front door perfectly. I called my old Marine buddy, RK, who runs a private investigation firm. We reviewed the absolutely horrifying video evidence together, and he immediately started setting up comprehensive surveillance at both Jake's place and mine. I transferred half our joint account money into my old personal account and canceled all our joint credit cards. Then I sent the video evidence to the company's board of directors and interim CEO, explaining everything in detail and reminding them about the morals clause in Jake's employment contract. The next morning, Allison called absolutely frantic because she'd woken up to find me gone, the car missing, and my wedding ring sitting on her purse. I told her in the coldest voice I could manage that we were getting divorced, and if she wanted to talk, she needed to come home alone. If Jake or any of his buddies showed up at my house, I'd blow their heads off. I'd never spoken to her like that before in our entire relationship, and she was completely shocked. RK's surveillance equipment picked up their conversation, planning to pill me again. Jake gave Allison a syringe filled with substances and knockout pills to inject me so they could abduct me and put me in his car trunk. When she arrived by Uber, I confronted her about everything while secretly recording it all. She tried to claim Jake had been blackmailing her with photos, but the evidence clearly showed she was a willing and enthusiastic participant who genuinely enjoyed destroying me. When Jake and his 3 buddies showed up to abduct me, I was completely ready for them. I pretended to be unconscious on the couch until Jake got close enough, then attacked him with everything I had. Punched him hard in the throat, kicked him brutally in the groin, then pulled out my hunting knife and held it against his neck, ready to decapitate him right there. I was literally seconds away from cutting his head off when RK burst in and talked me down just as police sirens filled the neighborhood. The police investigation uncovered Jake's entire criminal operation. He'd been systematically using my wife to sleep with clients during business trips, dealing hardcore pills from his townhouse, and had multiple attack charges from other women who finally came forward. All 5 conspirators were arrested and held without bail while awaiting trial. During the highly publicized trial, even more sufferers came forward with similar stories. The jury was absolutely horrified by the video evidence and my detailed testimony about their conspiracy. Jake received 50 years to life, Allison got 25 years to life, and the other 3 each received 20-year sentences. The company immediately fired them both and promoted me to regional manager with a significant raise and additional benefits. Jake was brutally homicided in prison just 6 months later. Apparently, his arrogant attitude and smug behavior pissed off the wrong people who didn't appreciate being disrespected. My divorce was finalized quickly since Allison signed everything immediately, desperate to avoid making her legal situation any worse than it already was. About 6 months after the trial ended, Alan's niece, Kristen, came to my office, specifically to thank me for taking down Jake. She revealed that he'd sexually attacked her when she was only 18, which explained why she'd avoided family gatherings for years and struggled with relationships. We started talking regularly, then dating, and she's everything Allison pretended to be: intelligent, loyal, genuine, and actually loving. I just proposed last month, and she tackled me to the floor with enthusiasm before saying yes. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out, and karma delivers justice far better than you ever could yourself. My life is infinitely better without those toxic, criminal people destroying everything I'd worked so hard to build. Update. People keep asking about the move-in part in my title. From reading all the texts and emails on Allison's phone, it was crystal clear that Jake's ultimate endgame was to completely destroy my entire life. Get me hopelessly obsessed with hardcore pills, maybe even force me into prostitution, as he explicitly stated, then move into my house and take over everything I'd worked for over the past decade. They were systematically planning to dismantle my entire existence and leave me with absolutely nothing while they lived in luxury off my hard work.